Hello, hello. Welcome back to Let's Get Lit. In today's podcast, we'll be talking about Chapter 4 of the Odyssey. Just as a reminder that the previous 3 chapters are up for your listening pleasure. So, please make sure that you're all caught up because, spoiler alerts! Alright, where we left off, Telemachus and Pisistratus reach Sparta at sundown. They go straight to Menelaus' home and arrive at his gates. The reader finds Menelaus celebrating 2 marriages at once. One of the marriages is for his daughter, who is marrying off to Achilles' son. The other marriage is for his son, Megapenses, to the daughter of Elector. Everyone is having a blast at the double weddings. Friends, family, neighbors, and more all are drinking and eating. There are singers and performers and stunt people. There's just so much going on at Menelaus' house. Telemachus and Pisistratus are riding up to the gates, and the guard who sees them comes running to Menelaus to tell him that strangers are approaching. The guard asks if he should let them in, and Menelaus gets very angry at him. He tells Elonius to bring them in and to take their horses to the stable. He reminds Elonius that they were travelers not too long ago and had to share in the kindness of strangers. Elonius returns with other servants and brought the men and horses to the stables. The servants got the horses fed, and Telemachus and Pisistratus went to the bathroom to take a bath, and they anointed themselves with oil. They were given nice clothes to wear, and then they were led to the party and sat next to Menelaus. They then washed their hands and began to feast upon many meats and breads of the house. They also drank a lot of wine. Menelaus then greeted his strangers and welcomed them. He said that after dinner he will ask them about where they came from and who they are. He then handed them the best sections of the meats, and they ate. As they were eating, Telemachus whispers to Pisistratus, and he tells him of all the riches Menelaus has. He notices the gold, silver, and amber, which, side note, apparently amber was extremely rare to find, and apparently there was only one place in all of Greece where it could be found. Telemachus tells Pisistratus of how Menelaus' house looks like that of Mount Olympus. Menelaus overhears Telemachus talking about his house. He tells Telemachus that Zeus is an immortal and has much nicer things than him, but of mortal men, he may or may not be richer than some. He then goes on to tell Telemachus that even though he has riches, it all came with a cost. He spent 8 long years trying to get home. He then lists off all the places he went to. Then he says that he can never truly enjoy his riches because his brother's wife plotted to murder his brother while Menelaus was out at sea. Menelaus tells Telemachus and Pisistratus that they surely must have heard of this story. He then tells them of how Paris and Helen robbed Menelaus on their way to Troy. He then says that he mourns for all of the Achaean soldiers as well, but that there is one in particular he worries about most. He tells of a noble man who was a great war hero, who worked really hard and risked a lot. How he has been gone for so long and no one knows whether he's alive or dead. How his father, wife Penelope, and son Telemachus are all grief-stricken, worried about him. Telemachus starts to cry when Menelaus finishes his speech. Helen comes down from her room and is seated by her husband. Homer tells of all of the gifts people have given her over the years. She questions Menelaus. She asks who these 2 strangers are that have come to visit them. She says that the one looks very familiar, very much like Odysseus. She believes him to be Telemachus. Menelaus then tells Helen he too sees the resemblance. His eyes, feet, hands, and head are very much in likeness of Odysseus. He then tells Helen that when he started talking about Odysseus, Telemachus started to cry. Pisistratus tells Menelaus that it is indeed Telemachus. He goes on to explain that Telemachus has traveled a very long way to ask him what has happened about his father. Also, that Telemachus is very shy and was trying to figure out a way to ask without being really rude. Menelaus instantly becomes very sorrowful for all the hardships he put Odysseus through. He says that he should have stayed with him at every turn. He should have founded him a city, built him a home, and all of his goods / wife and son transferred there. That way they wouldn't be dealing with the predicament they are in now. Everyone then starts to cry. Pisistratus tells Menelaus that he knows greatly about suffering and losing a loved one. But it is supper time, and they should wait until morning before talking about the dead. Menelaus tells Pisistratus that he is wise beyond his years like his father. Menelaus agrees that they should wait until tomorrow before talking about Odysseus. It is supper time after all. Helen, upon hearing this, decides to drug the wine. She drugs the wine with an herb that will not let anyone feel pain in any sorts, whether it be crying, feeling sad, or having sorrowful thoughts. Homer tells that she gets this particular drug from Egypt, from Polydamna. The servants then serve the wine, and Helen begins to speak. She says that she cannot tell of all of the exploits of Odysseus, but can tell what he did before Troy. He covered himself with wounds and bruises. He then enters the city of Troy. No one questions him except for Helen. She gave him a bath, and he told her of his plan. He killed many Trojans and got a lot of information. This made Helen happy because she was missing her home. She also said that she was mad at Aphrodite, who took her to Troy against her will, away from everything she loved. Menelaus tells everyone what she has said is true. He then adds how brave of a man Odysseus was during the invasion of Troy. When him and Odysseus and Diomed were inside the wooden horse, Odysseus is the one who saved everyone's life when one of the other soldiers wouldn't keep their mouths shut. Telemachus answers and said that it was sad how heroic his father was, and that couldn't save his life. He then expresses how he would like to go to sleep. Helen sends the maids to make the beds for Telemachus and Pisistratus. They follow the servants to their beds, and everyone goes to sleep. The next morning, Menelaus gets up and gets dressed and goes to sit by Telemachus. He then asks why Telemachus has come all the way to Sparta, if it is for a private or public matter. Telemachus tells Menelaus that he has come to gather word about his father. He asks what has happened to him and not spare any details. He also tells Menelaus about how the suitors are eating him out of house and home, and how they're destroying his property. Menelaus is appalled and tells Telemachus that Odysseus, when he comes back, will destroy these suitors. He then reassures that he will tell Telemachus everything without sparing the details. He says that he will tell him everything the old man from the sea had told him. Menelaus says that he was trying to get home, but the gods detained him in Egypt because they were not happy with the hecatombs he had offered. When all was right, he set off and sailed. Just as he got out of Egypt, the wind stopped blowing. For 20 days, he and his men were stranded. If it wasn't for the old man of the sea's daughter, they would not have made it, and they would have starved. They landed on an island, but all is still not good. One day, the daughter of the old man of the sea came to him and asked why they hadn't left yet. His men were dying inch by inch. He asks the goddess who she is, and then asks that since she is so desired, which god or goddess is keeping them there. He assures her it is not of his own will that he is staying. She tells Menelaus that there is a great Egyptian god, Proteus, who is right hand to Poseidon. If Menelaus can get a hold of him, he'll be able to tell him how to sail away safely and what has been happening at his house while he's been away. Menelaus asks how he might catch this god. Gods are not easy to catch, mind you. She says that every day at noon the old man comes out of the sea to sleep on the shore near a cave with his seals. Tomorrow morning she will take him and 3 of his men to a hiding spot to catch the old man. She will also tell them all of the tricks he'll play on them. She tells them that the first thing he does is count his seals on one hand before going to sleep. When he is asleep, grab a hold of him and hold on tight, because he'll turn himself into many different things. Once he becomes a man again, then you may ask your question. Menelaus then said that she left and they all went to their ships for supper, and then headed back to the beach and camped out there for the night. They wanted to get ready for when the goddess came back the next morning. The next morning, Menelaus got 3 of his best men and waited for the goddess. She arrived with 3 seal skins freshly made. Then she dug 4 holes, one for Menelaus and the 3 other men. They got into their holes and she placed the skins over them. The skins smelled horribly, but luckily the goddess placed ambrosia under each of the man's noses so they couldn't smell the stench. At noon, the old man did as the goddess said and came up to the shore and counted all of his seals. Once he was asleep, they grabbed a hold of the old man. He changed forms many times. He changed into a lion, a dragon, a tree, water, but Menelaus and his men held on super tight. After a while, the old man started to give up and asked which of the gods helped them devise this plan. Menelaus didn't give in to the trick, but simply asked which god was hindering his way of getting home. He also asked how best it would be to get home. The old man replied that the gods of heaven were not satisfied with his offerings. He must go back to Egypt and offer better hecatombs to the gods. Then he'll be able to make it home again. Menelaus responds and tells the old man he'll go back to Egypt, though he is broken-hearted. He thought he offered great sacrifices. He then asked the old man how the other Achaeans had fared trying to get home, about Nestor, and if he'd made it home safely, if anyone else had made it home or not. The old man tells Menelaus that he shouldn't want to know what has happened, for it's very sad. Nestor is still alive and traveling. Odysseus is alive, but is hindered from returning home. Ajax, though, is dead. Poseidon drove his ships into the rocks. Ajax escaped. He swam to the edge of the water, and he boasted how none of the gods could kill him. Well, Poseidon got really super pissed, and he split a rock above Ajax's head. It hit Ajax and drug him into the water where he died. Agamemnon made it home safely thanks to Hera. Aegisthus kept watch out for Agamemnon. When the guards saw Agamemnon wash up upon the shore, he went straight to Aegisthus. Aegisthus got a meal ready for Agamemnon, and hiding nearby, Aegisthus had 20 of his strongest men waiting to attack. Aegisthus got Agamemnon to the feast without any suspicions, and then he murdered him. Menelaus starts to cry at the thought of his brother dying, but the old man stopped him. He said that if Menelaus could hurry, he could still make it in time for the funeral. Menelaus then asks about Odysseus and tells the old man to spare no details, no matter how awful they might be. The old man tells him that Odysseus is stuck in a cave with Calypso, that he is sad because he can't leave. He has no ship or crew to help him get home. The old man also tells Menelaus that when he dies, he'll go to the Elysium fields, because he's Zeus' son-in-law. The old man then goes away into the sea, and Menelaus goes back to Egypt and makes better offerings. He then says he made it home safely. Menelaus then asks Telemachus to stay longer. He would like to give him gold and chariots and horses and very nice things to have. Telemachus tells him that he is flattered and he could spend months talking to him, but he has to get going because his men are in Pylos, and they are getting impatient. As for all the gifts, he says he would only like to have a plate. The horses and other gifts Menelaus should keep and should have. Menelaus took no offense and said that Telemachus' response proves he's from a good and noble family. He then gives Telemachus a bowl made from Hephaestus that was given to Menelaus as a gift. They then talked for a little while longer as they ate and drank. Meanwhile, the suitors at Odysseus' house were playing and behaving badly. Homer then goes on to tell the readers that Antinous and Eurymachus were the ringleaders of all the suitors. Nomen, the guy who Athena borrowed the boat from, went up to Antinous and asked when Telemachus was coming back from his journey. He was waiting to use his boat again. When Antinous heard this, he was in complete shock. Antinous asked Nomen how long Telemachus had been away. Also, if he took the ship from him or if Nomen had lent it out to Telemachus. Nomen said that he lent it to Telemachus, and he took the best of the young men with him. Nomen also said that he saw Mentor go with him, or a god who looked a lot like Mentor. Nomen swore he saw Mentor in town earlier, but wasn't quite sure. Nomen leaves, and Antinous and Eurymachus are super pissed. They call a meeting where Antinous says, "How did he get away? They made sure he wouldn't leave, but he's left. Ugh, that little shit." He then came up with a plan to get a boat and wait for him to come back home. Then they will ambush Telemachus and murder him. All of the men agreed and went inside. Medon, a servant to Penelope, went to go tell her what he had overheard. When he crossed the threshold, however, of her room, she immediately explodes on him that if he has to come tell her something from the suitors, they should be ashamed to ask her anything. When Odysseus was ruler, he was fair and just, and he was righteous to every man. Medon tells her he wishes it was something so trivial. He tells her how the suitors are planning on killing Telemachus. Penelope gets very upset and starts asking why he left. Why would he do that? Does he want to die without an heir? Medon says he doesn't know the answers to any of those questions. Penelope throws herself on the floor crying. She starts yelling into the air, giving blame to all of her nurses. She then asks if one can fetch Laertes and see if he can round up sympathy for their household. Eurycleia tells Penelope everything Telemachus told her, and she said she wasn't supposed to say anything for 10 to 12 days, or when someone told her. She didn't want Penelope to spoil her beauty. She asks Penelope not to call Laertes. Penelope cleans herself up and takes an offering to Athena, where she prays to her. She begs Athena to give Telemachus safe travels and return safely. Athena hears this prayer. One of the suitors overhears her praying and says to himself, Telemachus is going to die. Antinous tells everyone to shut up and not talk about their plot to kill Telemachus. He doesn't want anyone to overhear and ruin their plan. Antinous then took 20 men and got a boat ready. Then they took supper and then they headed out again. Penelope, meanwhile, in her room, unable to eat or drink, wonders if her son will make it out alive. She then falls asleep. Athena sends a vision to Penelope in the form of her sister. She says that since Telemachus is righteous and he has done no wrong, he'll come back to her. Penelope tells the vision that she is worried Telemachus has many enemies that want to kill him. Also, that she misses her husband, but she knows he's tough and can take care of himself. Telemachus, however, is just a boy. The vision tells Penelope that she shouldn't worry. Athena is on his side. Athena is the one who sent this vision to Penelope. Penelope then asks that if the vision knows anything about her husband Odysseus, if he's dead or anything of that nature. The vision does not say because it doesn't want to tell her false things. The vision disappears, and Penelope wakes up refreshed and feeling great. In the meantime, the suitors got the boat ready at where they thought Telemachus was going to be, and they waited for him. This is all of chapter 4. I know, guys, this was a long chapter, but thank you for making it to the very end. And remember, if you like these, please subscribe, share, comment, and share with all of your friends. And as always, guys, stay lit.